Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio, Sporting News, Forbes. He covers the NBA all over the place. We're talking now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Welcome back, pal. How are you?
Great. I mean, I'm just telling your man Josh off the air, I can't, Philadelphia is now the capital of sports between the Eagles and Villanova. I guess the Phillies are next. Well, forget the Phillies. I mean, Kapler's going to burn out his bullpen by Memorial Day. Come on, man.
I think he crashed. I think he crashed Facebook today. The game's on Facebook. I think he crashed it already with.
Did he really? I'll tell you what. The Met fans are in an uproar up here because you can only get the game on Facebook, right? And they don't like that at all. They want it on obviously on TV. So it's caused a huge, huge problem. And, of course, that's the Mets because Met fans are just naturally angry, and the boiling point has just reached another level.
Well, think about this, Mitch. Last night you had 3 games on at the same time, Flyers, Sixers, and Phillies. Flyers and Sixers on TV. Phillies were streamed on NBC Philadelphia's website only.
Oh, my God.
Think about that.
Awful.
I mean, really.
That's awful.
Unbelievable, right?
That's a bad job by them. But this is, going to these alternate broadcast things. Hey, I can't still get over the fact that CBS didn't have the Monday night game.
Right. Well,
that's just absurd.
Yeah, next year they had some weird thing in the contract there,
yeah.
But
and they got the worst rating ever.
Yep.
Basically.
Worst rating in the history of the NCAA championship game.
You want to know something? When you picked it up, you knew it was a snake, right? So you got bit.
Well, here we go. A lot to get into, Mitch. We got 5 left for some of these teams.
Yeah.
Let's look at the top. Toronto lost to. Are they in trouble? They lose to Cleveland. They play Boston again. What are we talking about? Toronto. We were believing in them. We wanted to.
I'll tell you what. It's amazing. Toronto right now is they're in this titanic struggle to finish in first when basically, except for Boston's crazy start. Remember, Boston started the year. Hayward goes down. They reeled off 16 straight. They were 18-3, and then Toronto overtook them, and they never looked back. And then now Toronto's lost, 5 out of their last 8. The defense has been awful. They had that crazy game in Boston Garden where it looked like those guys had never played against the zone. You got Kyle Lowry running down to San Antonio over there to watch, Villanova play, which is a terrible decision on his part, Mike, because you got to know your team's situation. This late in the year, they didn't rest you all year so you could run down to the Alamo and watch Villanova. They rested you so that, you'd have some extra fuel in the playoffs. And by the way, if you had to struggle down the stretch, at least you have your legs. He got outplayed by Jose Calderon very badly last night. So shame on Kyle Lowry for doing that. It's not as if Villanova, by the way, hadn't won since 1985. They just won a couple of years ago. But anyway, Kyle Lowry, he has to come back tonight against Boston. And I know Boston is depleted. They're 12-5 without Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, if Boston finishes in first place, if they overtake Toronto, my good friend Dwayne Casey's not going to win the Coach of the Year. It's going to have to be Brad Stevens because he'll have overtaken Toronto down the stretch without his best player, one of the best in the game, in Kyrie Irving, and his best defender in Marcus Smart. Tell me that Brad Stevens wouldn't deserve in that case to be Coach of the Year if Boston finishes in first place against all odds. They've had a zillion injuries, especially compared to Toronto. It's an awful job by Toronto and a great job by Boston.
Yeah, he's on the list. I think there's an interesting group of candidates for this, but Stevens has got to be on there. You got to put McMillan. You got to put Brett Brown.
No doubt.
Terry Stotts.
Well, you put Terry. I'll tell you what. There's never been a back-to-back, but Mike D'Antoni hasn't done a bad job in Houston. And, Chris Paul, it's not like Chris Paul's, answered the bell every game. He's missed like 24 games, Chris Paul.
True.
So, yes, he has the MVP in James Harden. And, yes, his system is – Mike D'Antoni has had a phenomenal year. You got to remember, too, the Rockets had never won in their history more than 58 games. So they've done a phenomenal job. It's going to be an Eastern Conference guy. It's got to be Brad Stevens or Casey. Brett Brown deserves a ton of consideration. They're going to finish with a home court advantage, it looks like, first round. Nate McMillan, everybody thought they got fleeced in the Paul George deal. They've done a great job. They could finish, obviously, as you know, right now Philly and they are fighting for fourth spot. It looks like Philly will make it. But, yeah, you got a lot of great candidates this year for Coach of the Year, and including some unexpected ones.
No doubt. You look at Boston, you talked about what they've done without Kyrie Irving. They're going to be, they're 2 back now. They play Toronto. Yeah. They got an interesting schedule here. They can maybe get that top spot, but Toronto, Boston, you feeling that either one of them is still better than Cleveland?
No. I mean, well, first of all, Toronto definitely not, because they've lost like 10 out of the last 11 games to Cleveland. Every time it's funny. Every time they play Cleveland, it's more about Toronto than Cleveland, because, Cleveland can beat them anytime. But every loss that Toronto takes against Cleveland, to me, it just adds to that mental hurdle they're going to have to overcome if, let's say, they meet them in the playoffs. Because Toronto, it's just they can't deal with LeBron James. By the way, like a lot of teams in the East. Boston, they're going to enter the playoffs without Kyrie Irving and Marcus Smart. Could they get picked off? Conceivably, they could. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, because then you're looking at, in a playoff series, who are they going to turn to as their number one scorer? They're going to be down Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart, forget about scoring. He can't shoot. He can't throw a bag of garbage off a pier into the ocean. But these other guys, absolutely. I mean, you're going to count on Jaylen Brown, Tatum to deliver you big scoring games in the playoffs when, a guy like Tatum hasn't ever played. Jaylen Brown will be his second year. So Boston could be in a world of trouble, especially if they face a team like Milwaukee, where Antetokounmpo can beat you by himself in several games. Now, Miami, I don't think Miami's going to be a tough out for anybody. They don't have any stars. It's all about stars in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think Boston's in trouble. The way Toronto is playing down the stretch, where they've got major significant problems at both ends of the court, they've got problems. The one team that I'm looking at saying, you know what, they look like they're going to be pretty good is Cleveland again. Why? Because LeBron James has not played 82 games for the first time in his life or whatever, and they've won, 10 of 11 games, and they don't even have George Hill. He's been out, and Kevin Love just came back from concussion and stuff. So when you're getting driven by LeBron James, there's nobody better driving the big bus than that guy.
No doubt. If somebody can push Cleveland, who is it? Is it Philly? You talk about stars. They got two.
Well, they got two, but they've never played in the playoffs. And everybody down in Philly is going to be talking about how all their veteran guys are going to teach these guys what the playoffs is all about. That's a bunch of baloney. They're going to have to learn for themselves, and they're going to have to learn the hard way. And they're going to have to be hard lessons learned. It happens to everybody. It happened to Magic Johnson decades ago. It happens to people. Now, Magic, in his first playoff series, I should say, had that incredible outing against Philadelphia where he subbed for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But later on, he even struggled in some playoff series when he's still a young player. You have to experience the playoffs. For Ben Simmons, what does that mean? He's going to, he's a turnover machine at times. He's going to have to learn how the ball has to be valued in the fourth quarter. In any quarter of a playoff game, you just can't throw the ball around like they do. Embiid is also a high turnover guy. I could see a situation where they're winning a game in the playoffs. I don't know against who. Don't ask me. But I could see them down the stretch having a lead and blowing the game because they threw a ball around like a hot potato. It could happen. Ben Simmons has to prove himself at the foul line down the stretch of these games. So they're going to have to learn. J.J. Redick can't teach them. Ilya Stova can't teach them. All these veteran players who they brought in, it's nice to have these guys, but the young players have to learn the value, the big lessons in the playoffs. It's all about, ball, possession, clock, score, and time, how you perform in the clutch down the stretch of these games. And they've been a high turnover team, Mike. You know that all year long. They can make dumb mistakes. And the one thing about the regular season, people say, the regular season, what does it mean? A team like Philly, you can see what they do game after game. It's a blueprint that you'll see in the playoffs where their strengths and weaknesses are. It's just like Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City people are talking about, they got these 3 stars and they're going to be greatness and that. What is their problem? They can't close out games. And I guarantee you they won't be able to close out some games. They'll probably be an easier out in the playoffs than people think.
Talk with Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM, NBA Radio, Forbes, Sporting News, covering the NBA playoffs coming up April 14th. With Philly, let me ask you, we've talked a lot about them over the years, and it's been all gloom and doom, but, are they ahead of where you thought they'd be? I mean, they're about to win 50. They got 11 in a row.
Yes, I'll tell you why. First of all, I don't think I had them in the playoffs because I thought Embiid would get hurt. So they proved me wrong there. Then you have to learn how to win, okay? Then what you want to do is be a playoff team and just get into the playoffs, meaning you won't have home court advantage in the first round. So they could win 50 games. They could have the home court advantage in the first round. This is a monster season, much better than I thought, because I really didn't know how long Embiid would play, how many games. I didn't know much about, Ben Simmons in terms of what he would do. I thought he could be a hell of a player. But no, they have, to me, exceeded my expectations. If you finish with a home court advantage in the first round and 50 games after coming up from nothing, from, the depths of despair and everything down there in your first year where these two guys are together, that is a tremendous year. People are going to say, well, they got to win a first-round series with the home court advantage. They don't have to do anything. we'll see what they do. It would be nice if they could beat Indiana in a, let's say they play 4 or 5. You know, they're not a great road team, right? I mean, you've seen that. And but I think what this last few games without Embiid helps is they're still on a roll. They've got a cakewalk of a schedule versus Indiana. They could go into the playoffs with a monster winning streak and have the home court in the first round. And then, of course, they could lose game 1 of the playoffs at home because there'll be so much pressure on them. But where they are right now, I think in the big picture, Mike, they are very much ahead of schedule.
Yeah, Embiid being out is really the mystery and the wild card here. But let me ask you, what are you seeing from Fultz? What are you hearing about? You know, last night, it's almost like Brett Brown has a kid that he just can't hold himself back from wanting to use just a little bit more every single night.
I've been impressed. I mean, you know, he's going to have, you know, the problem for Fultz is you've come into the season when everybody is, you know, has played several months. People are in great condition. Yes, some guys are banged up, but for the most part, you're catching up with your conditioning and getting into game shape, and you're learning. You know, he hasn't played hardly at all. What did he play? A handful of games to start out with. So you're behind the 8 ball there. But the guy, I love, you know, he's a willing passer. We've seen that. He gets to the basket. I think people are very impressed. A lot of people were surprised that actually they brought him back. A lot of people thought that he wasn't going to come back this year, that you'd see him next year. And so, hey, this is the big 3 for the Sixers, and we're going to see how it works out. But I think everybody's gotten positive review, you know, given positive review so far, considering where he was in terms of that crazy injury and remaking his shot, and mentally, was he out of it? Where was he? And with his head and all that stuff. So, no, I think a lot of people have been very impressed so far. And, look, we all know that no matter what LeBron does in the Eastern Conference, and we got Boston, Toronto, if Embiid stays healthy and can stay on the court and give you 75 games a year, and you've got Ben Simmons, he can develop a mid-range shot and get more confidence there, and you got Markelle Fultz, I mean, you got the makings of an Eastern Conference dominant team.
Mitch, I was there last night. That Nets team's not very good, but
they have no talent.
No, but the Hornets on Sunday had no desire to be there.
Yeah,
you got a problem. I mean, there's 9 to 10 teams that just have no interest.
Yeah, well, now I don't know if the Nets didn't care last night. Usually, the one thing about the Nets, I will say this for Kenny Atkins, and he's not working for a lot with much, the net coach. Usually, his guys play very hard.
Yes.
Usually, they are in games throughout. Now you are, if you're a net, you know what? You can see the finish line, and you might have nights where you're not going to show up. Now there are teams that don't show up in December, the Nets weren't one of those teams. Yeah, Charlotte, they've got veteran guys. They are looking to go on April 15th, whenever that, 12th, whenever that last game is. They're off to Cabo. They're off to vacation. They're going to play golf. They can't wait to get out of a losing situation because a team like Charlotte underachieved this year, and they know that things are bad and there could be a big shakeup. They're going to have a new GM. So those guys are looking. They'll just quit on you. And I'm not just singling them out. There are other teams, too. I mean, we saw Memphis get destroyed in some games this year, but they're playing. You got to remember, too, a lot of these tanking teams, the reason that they are tanking, when you step back and you look at the roster, they don't have a lot going for them. So, yeah, does the league have a tanking problem? They had a tanking problem with Philly because Philly did it for, 3 years, 4 years? I don't think there's a real tanking problem. I think when teams set themselves up with really bad rosters, you're going to lose for the express purpose, Mike, of getting Ayton in the draft or getting Bagley in the draft or getting, whoever it is, the Alabama point guard. I mean, there's the reason. I think we've talked about this before. There are certain markets in the NBA, and I don't think the NBA wants to admit this, but I think there are certain markets where you can't get free agents to go play.
No doubt.
So you have to tank.
Well,
why?
And I said before,
you want to
Mitch,
get a top pick.
Yeah, and I said before, this wasn't a Sixers problem. This was an NBA problem. Now, the Sixers were the one team, and everybody said, well, I mean, Atkins said it last night, I'm jealous of them. He said, they've really developed a program we're chasing. They're a juggernaut. He said, I'm jealous of that team.
Yeah.
They were the one team doing it by themselves, but now you got 9 to 10 teams trying to follow suit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the look. And there's some, every team is on a different. You judge. Look, a team like Phoenix, for instance.
Yeah.
They haven't done anything for almost a decade. Where's their drafting? Why does Ryan McDonough still have a job as the GM? I mean, they've collected some high draft picks. Yes, they had the misfortune of going backwards in the lottery instead of leaping up ahead of teams. They were luckless in the lottery and they moved down, and that might have cost them a good player. It comes down to no matter where you draft, first, second, third. Yes, that gives you more flexibility in terms of potential trades and stuff. But if you're drafting consistently over a decade in the lottery and you're getting top 5, 6 picks and you're not turning it around, well, you have a front office problem. That's the problem there. And so, look, we'll see. Philadelphia for many years didn't get the number 1 overall pick until they got Ben Simmons, right? For all the losing they did on purpose, what did it get them? They got Embiid because teams didn't want to take Embiid because he was damaged goods when he came out. You got to remember that, too. And they drafted, Nerlens Noel off in the end.
Yeah.
So, we all know, Philly's history better than anybody else. And so you know what they do. These other teams, we'll see who jumps up.
Well, the difference is, Mitch, and for all the criticism Hinkie got was, you're right. You don't hit on every pick, but he got multiple picks in multiple drafts so that if I get one wrong, if I get 8 shots, I'm going to find 3 guys. Instead of getting just 4 shots in 4 drafts, they had 8 shots in 4 drafts.
Well, the thing about it is he gets Embiid, and Embiid has had, obviously, some serious injuries, right?
Yep.
In different parts of his body. And you don't, whenever you talk to people around the league, it's still about, can Embiid stay upright and stay on the court? So that's always there. Ben Simmons, look, people liked him, as a number 1 overall pick, but, it seemed like Sam's whole thing was collecting picks.
Yes.
That was his whole thing. It's collecting picks. We didn't know if he'd make good selections or not. Michael Carter-Williams and Nerlens Noel. Okafor, right?
Yep.
He was there for Okafor. So, look, it's great to get picks, but you got to know what you're doing in selecting players. That's the whole key. Let's not forget, Golden State built their team. Forget about Kevin Durant. They built their original core with players who were taken. I think Curry was 7. I think Klay Thompson was 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Draymond Green was the second-round pick. Bob Meyer, the GM, he knows what he's doing in terms of talent evaluation with guys like Jerry West. I don't know if Sam Hinkie's got that type of a resume exactly. He knows how to get, he'll trade for picks. That's fine. You got to know what to do with those picks.
No doubt. And as you mentioned, they got Dario as well on that trade.
Yeah.
A lot of it, though, was, look, they were willing to be patient and say, we'll take the chance that this guy's good because if he's not good, the worst part is we'll get another pick next year.
Yeah, they're willing to be patient, but it was to the extreme.
Yes.
The thing that the league didn't like was that the league will put up with a team that tanks for a year, 2 maybe, but not what was going on in Philadelphia. That was shameful. That was ridiculous. That was the league I think was concerned about. Hey, what are you doing to the fans down there? This is one of the traditional big time franchises in NBA history. What the heck is going on in Philadelphia with the owners there? Sam Hinkie was allowed to do this. It's Josh Harris and his crowd that allowed him to do it, and I think that turned the league off. On a lot of teams, too, a lot of executives were like, you can't do this to your fan base.
Mitch Lawrence with us here, looking out at the NBA playoffs starting in the 14th, April 14th, so about a week and a half away. We still got good races for the 3. Actually, the top spot now in the East.
How about the West?
I was going to say, let's go to the West.
It's unbelievable.
I was going to say, let's go to the West because the other day, New Orleans is up to 4. Now they're almost on the way out.
They might be on the way out.
Yes, it's crazy, that West. But the question in the West is it more than a 2-team race?
No, when it comes down to it, it's not going to be. It's going to be a Houston-Golden State thing. And really the playing field was leveled when Steph Curry damaged his knee with that grade 2 sprain because you got to remember, he came back off a knee injury. Remember in the playoffs a couple of years ago when he slipped on that puddle in Houston, I think it was, he was not the same player. That's the 73-win team that he struggled in the finals. He didn't have the same lift, explosion, et cetera. Now, that was grade 1 sprain of his other knee. This is a grade 2 sprain. So who knows, he might be out for the first round, probably more than that into the second round, maybe the second round too. Who knows how he'll be when he comes back. Now, without him, you still have Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, guys who have won titles. They know how to get the job done. But obviously, that's not the same team as if they had their 4 All-Stars and the 2 MVPs healthy and everybody was rolling into the playoffs, they'd be the prohibitive favorites. Even people would look at Houston and say, well, Houston might get a game, maybe 2. Now, can Houston beat them? You know what? With home court advantage, who knows? This might be more of a coin toss series than we've seen or you thought about entering the year. But I don't think anybody else in the way. Portland's the number 3 team, and they've played very well. They are now they can win basically any game as long as Damian Lillard is healthy. And by the way, he might be out until the playoffs with his ankle deal. But and he's an MVP. He's going to be. He won't be 1 or 2, but Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, guys like DeMar DeRozan will be 3, 4, 5 in there after LeBron at 2 and James Harden at 1. And but I don't think Portland's a contender, and I don't think San Antonio's a contender, and I don't think Minnesota, Utah. And Utah, I think they jumped up to 4, right, which is an amazing story, losing Gordon Hayward and George Hill and guys like that. I just don't – can they give these top teams trouble? Yeah, we'll see, maybe. But I don't see anybody springing a massive, monumental upset of the Rockets and Warriors. I still expect my conference finals West, Houston, Golden State. Let's get it going.
Mitch, if you could pair up 2 teams to play in the first round that you want to see on that first Saturday,
yes.
Who is it?
Yes. Well, it's Golden State, Oklahoma City, because you're going to have Durant back in Oklahoma City. Now, that series would obviously start in Oakland, but you got the Westbrook, Paul George thing with Carmelo Anthony. That would have a lot of sizzle. That's obvious. Also, now I don't think this would be much of a series, but you know what? Cleveland, Miami, for the people who want to see Dwayne Wade against LeBron, you have that there. That's obvious. Back out in the West, I think, that's to me it's really, Golden State, Oklahoma series, you got a lot of hate there.
What's Leonard's story? What's going on with the Kawhi?
Well, Kawhi Leonard is unlike, here's the deal. You always had guys like Tim Duncan or David Robinson in the Popovich era who were basically Spurs type of players. They believed in Popovich. They basically did what he wanted to do. They towed the line, and they were, they were Spurs type of what people call Spurs type players. And we found out that Kawhi Leonard obviously isn't, because now it's all about, for him, he the diagnosis of what was going on with his leg, whether it was botched or not, he got his own. It sounds like it was. He got his own people. He has his own medical team. That's never been done before. Usually the Spurs are guys who believe in everything there, whether it's Pop or the medical staff, everybody who deals with them, the doctors. And so Kawhi's gone off on his own. He's off the reservation. A lot of people think he's going to be traded. A lot of people think that at least the Spurs will talk to people. They got to make a big decision here. They've come out and basically, if it's not Popovich, but it's guys like Tony Parker and Ginobili have been highly critical, if you've noticed their comments over the last few weeks about Kawhi Leonard, and they had that team meeting, and that basically they did that at the behest of the organization. They wouldn't just go rogue. That was done with Pop's blessing, obviously, Greg Popovich. And so this is an organization that looks like it has turned on its own player because what he's done, and now they have to make a decision about, are we going to give him $200 million in an extension? I don't know, after you kill a guy like that publicly, and he's really been, they really dragged him through the mud there, basically saying that he should be playing and he's not. He's jaking on the injury. Now they're going to all of a sudden reverse pivot, reverse gear, and basically say, okay, we're going to give you $200 million. I think they're going to field some offers. Now, can anybody get him with a kind of a trade that would make sense for the Spurs? You're talking about a guy who's one of the top 3 or 4 players in the league. Maybe the best two-way player. I don't know if they can trade him. All I know is they're unhappy with him. He's unhappy with them. Let's not forget, he's an L.A. area guy. And that, I would be sure, if Magic Johnson or the Clippers could somehow get him, they would try to make a move. Not say San Antonio would move him, but how are you going to give that guy $200 million now when you've been killing him publicly? You're really going to make that? You're really going to change, do an about-face like that?
Mitch Lawrence, NBA columnist, SiriusXM NBA Radio, at Mitch_Lawrence, as the playoffs are almost here, and the Sixers play the Pistons tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Mike. Good talking to you.